Hare Krishna. Chances are, it does say live, so chances are someone might be able to hear me here. Hare Krishna. Welcome to the continuation of the introduction to Bhagavad-Gita. Thanks to Arjuna for pulling it together and keeping us on task. So we'll begin then. Timarandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master is forcing me to open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet. Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakta Vedanta Swamini Tanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Govani Pacharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschadesha Tarane. We'll chant invocation. Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, continuing the introduction to Bhagavad-Gita. We finished off the other day. We were hearing about the one. Actually, we are all swallowed by the Tigris of nations. The Lord is very merciful upon the living and especially the human beings. To this end, he spoke the Bhagavad-Gita, making his friend Arjuna his student. Associate of Lord Krishna, Arjuna was above all ignorance, but Arjuna was put into ignorance on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to question Lord Krishna about the problems of life, so that the Lord could explain them for the benefit of future generations of human beings and chalk out the plan of life. Then man could act accordingly and perfect the mission of human life. It's just worth mentioning that the problems of life are not that I can get a raise. It's not that I can get a better house, not that I can get a better this, a better that. These are adjustments that we attempt to adjust and think that that will bring us great satisfaction and will satisfy the goal of the human life. So we got a bit of a mistaken concept there. The problems of life are janma, mritya, jara, vyadi, birth, death, disease, and old age. And Srila Prabhupada really all the time pointing out the reality of our situation in this world. So that is the mission of human life, is to go beyond birth and death, to escape from the samsara chakra. It just reminds me also of the the famous prayer that she offers. She says, I wish that these calamities would happen again and again. We could see you again and again, because seeing you means that we see repeated births and deaths. So this desire for freedom is not wrong, the desire for liberation and freedom from material suffering. So, but unfortunately, we tend to just want our own freedom, and we don't understand that the actual real freedom is to be resituated in our position as eternal servants of Krishna. That will be the end goal. And Queen Kunti is praying in that way. She wants freedom from the miseries of the material world, the repeated birth and death, but she's understood clearly that the way to gain that is to see or have the darshan, the relationship, the connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is the, what would we say, everything in its proper place. And we're going to hear about that today. Then man could act accordingly and perfect the mission of human life. So there's actually a mission. What do you know? Okay, continuing Prabhupada's purport. The subject of the Bhagavad-Gita entails the comprehension of 5 basic truths. First of all, the science of God explained and then the constitutional position of the living entities, jivas. There is Ishvara, which means the controller, and there are jivas, the living entities which are controlled. If a living entity says that he is not controlled but that he is free, then he is insane. So Srila Prabhupada is very candid in his comments, and he shakes us into facing a certain reality, and that is the business of the acharyas, is to distinguish between illusion and reality for the benefit of everyone. That's the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam. If a living entity says that he is not controlled, but that he is free, and that's the idea. Everyone says, we want freedom, we don't want restriction. We don't want rules and regulations. We don't want to hear that there's a supreme master and I'm a servant, because that means I lose my freedom. And it sounds very, what would you say? Realistic. What the person's saying seems to have some validity to it. But Prabhupada says that he's insane, because if we look at our actual position in this world, we'll find that we are controlled at every moment. There's no sense, there's actual no freedom. Only by following the regulative principles of freedom as expounded in books of like Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, Bhagavatam, and so on, we are able to gain freedom. Srila Prabhupada gave the example that if we follow the rules of the state, this is a general statement, but if we follow, like for example, to drive on the left of the road, you have to follow that rule. If you drive on the right hand side, like in other countries, which is quite using often if you're traveling around, then you get in trouble, and ignorance is no excuse. If you just go on the other side and say, oh well, in my country it's this side of the road, and you smash in and kill somebody, you're in big trouble. So there are rules and guidelines and regulation, any kind of aspect of life, which if followed gives us a sense of freedom. To all the rules and regulations that are going on at the moment, you lose freedom, you gain freedom, like that. So Srila Prabhupada is very saying that he's insane. So he's not intelligent to say that he's free. And we've seen that, we saw that in the 60s, in the 70s, 1960s and 70s, the idea of complete freedom from any rules and regulations. But those who dropped out, they used to call it dropped out of society. Then I think historically it's been shown that most of the dropouts dropped back in again after 20 years or whatever number of years they managed to, because they found that didn't work out quite the way we thought. So a speculation on how to drop out of society, i.e. material society, will not bring us the completion or the perfection of the mission of the human form of life. So this declaration that one is free is not a very clearly thought out. The living being, continuing, the living being is controlled in every respect, at least in his conditioned life. Gives us a hint there of the spiritual realm, where there's the control is of a different nature in the spiritual realm. And there's an amazing amount of freedom to express oneself in loving exchanges with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the Bhagavad-Gita, the subject matter deals with the Ishvara, the Supreme Controller, and the Jivas, the controlled living entities. Prakriti, material nature, and time, the duration of existence of the whole universe or the manifestation of material nature, and karma, activity, are also discussed. The cosmic manifestation is full of different activities. So Prabhupada's last of the five items. So the five items we'll just recap on is Ishvara, the supreme controller. There's the Jiva, those who are controlled. These are the material nature, Prakriti, and time, the time element, duration of existence of the whole universe, or the manifestation of material nature. And karma, activity. So those are the five. The cosmic manifestation is full of activities. All living entities are engaged in different activities. From Bhagavad-Gita, we must learn what God is, that's the Ishvara, what the living entities are, the Jivas, what Prakriti, and what is material nature, what the cosmic manifestation is, how it is controlled by time, and what the activities of the living entities are. So by understanding these five, we will understand a lot. Continuing, out of these five basic matters in Bhagavad Gita, it is established that the Supreme Godhead, or Krishna, or Brahman, or the Supreme Paramatma, you may use whatever name you like, is the greatest of all. The living beings are in quality like the Supreme Controller. For instance, and that's very interesting, isn't it? The living beings are in quality like the Supreme Controller. Oh, okay, that's pretty sounds a little bit inspirational. You like the Supreme, but it is in quality. Prabhupada goes on. For instance, the Lord has control over the universal affairs of material nature, as will be explained in the later chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Material nature is not independent. She is acting under the directions of the Supreme Lord. As Lord Krishna says, Maya Jakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. This material nature is working under my direction. When we see wonderful things happening in the cosmic nature, know that behind this cosmic manifestation there is a controller. Nothing could be manifested without being controlled. It is childish not to consider the controller. For instance, a child may think that an automobile is quite wonderful to be able to run without a horse or other animal pulling it. So yeah, it's quite an amazing thing. There's this box, this tin sort of box thing. It's got some wheels on it and it just kind of goes. And there's no apparent pulling or pushing of anything external. It seems it does it. But then Prabhupada goes on to explain. But a sane man knows that the nature of the automobile engineering arrangement. He always knows that behind the machinery there is a man. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the driver under whose direction everything is working. I've been listening to a lot of conversations of Srila recently, and he has this sharp, completely spiritually purified intelligence to penetrate through anything which appears to deviate or accuse us on the subject matter of the thing is actually functioning and how it is working. For example, she was speaking regularly on the subject matters of creation, and he's saying that modern science, instead of establishing the Supreme Lord as the supreme personality in all of this cosmic manifestation, trying to say God is dead, there is no God, there is no controller. Prabhupada keeps pointing at every state that there's no question of anything being manifest without a person behind it. There's always a person behind it. Just like when we see a painting, the painting didn't just appear. There's an intelligent person who painted say a beautiful flower or a landscape, it may be that's been painted. And it requires intelligence, and then gradually something is manifested. But it doesn't manifest all itself. It requires a brain. Similarly, this cosmic manifestation. I mentioned a while back, there was an old article in BTG, and it was called The Unseen Controller. And they had a diagram, not a diagram, yeah, a drawing of a space satellite in space. And it was using this diagram to show that it would appear if you go there, there's no place that's here, it's just floating in space. And there's no controller. It just happens to be here, and maybe it's been here since the beginning of existence, and there's eternally even. But actually, there's a controller. It's a remote controller. The person is not seen very easily, but one who's intelligent, who knows about, Prabhupada said, the mechanical or machinery arrangement, that there's an unseen controller in a remote place. So we are so bewildered by material nature. We think, I can taste it, touch it, see it, hear it, smell it through my senses. Then it can't be. There's no remote cause. So Prabhupada is just constantly trying to establish that and dispel quickly cuts through, just like he said earlier, that anyone who thinks in this bewildered way that there's no control behind it and that one is completely free, then he's insane. He's not intelligent. He's not got sane understanding. Continuing. He always knows that behind the machinery there is a man, a driver. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the driver under whose direction everything is working. And Parasha Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate, Krishna has unlimited potencies, potencies. That is the nature of the Supreme Godhead. So that is to be appreciated. Jiva Goswami states that one cannot have any appreciation of the Supreme Godhead unless one accepts or appreciates the idea or embraces the concept that he possesses inconceivable potencies. Inconceivable means you can't understand it, you can't really get your head around it. It's beyond your comprehension. And we used the example, and Prabhupada used it often, was the frogs, visiting the Pacific Ocean, coming back, trying to explain it. Not easy, not able to comprehend because it's beyond the experience and capacity of the other frogs. No, the jivas or the living entities have been accepted by the Lord. No, the jivas or the living entities have been accepted by the Lord, as we know later chapters, as his parts and parcels. A particle of gold, a drop of water from the ocean, is also salty. And similarly, we, the living entity, being part and parcel of the Supreme Controller, Ishvara, or Bhagavan, and Lord Sri Krishna, all the qualities of the Supreme Lord in minute quantity, because we are minute Ishvaras, subordinate Ishvaras. We are trying to control nature. Presently, we are trying to control space or planets. And this tendency to control is there because it is in Krishna. Like a child is trying to manifest that desire to control in various ways. But it's limited in the capacity. Therefore, we find the parent has to provide facilities for the child to manifest that tendency to control and to enjoy through controlling. So it's a reflection of this idea that we're hearing about here, that there is a supreme controller and that we are also Ishvars, but we're very, very small and very dependent on... Sorry, I'm getting distracted, as I usually do. There's a horse walking up towards me, and then the dog barks, but that's okay. I'm just going to keep talking because the person on the horse most likely will think that I'm talking on the phone to someone and that's fine. Click, clop, click, clop, click, clop. And the dog's gone quiet. Thank you very much. So it's a very, very simple point, but very profound, that the Supreme Lord is the Supreme Ishvara, and we are also Ishvaras, and we see it. It comes up all the time. It's, yeah, as we give the example of the child, it's natural. We all want to control. But if we can understand by hearing from Bhagavad-Gita that we are tiny, tiny controllers, very, very limited uh, potential. And if we can get our head around that and accept that, these are the teachings, it makes a lot of sense. So instead of struggling to dominate over other little tiny bits, that's the mood of envy, then we can hear that this is not going to bring you the satisfaction. Remember, Mamo Pecha Purna Jama Dukalayama Shashvatam. Dukalayam, material world, from the highest planet down to the lowest, are all places of repeated birth and death, where misery takes place. That's the explanation. And that's our experience. When we look carefully at it, we don't have to look too hard. We find it's frustration all over the place, disappointment, and we just keep struggling on to try and think that we can adjust and control and enjoy in the world. But doing that, our mortality is going on too. It's dukalayam asasvatam. It's asat. The whole material manifestation is temporary. And we don't realize that, and we just go on and on and on until finally one day we die, we drop dead. So Bhagavatam says, what is the value of a prolonged duration of life which is wasted and experienced by many years in this world? What is the value of it? There's no real value to it. A moment's full consciousness, because that gives one a start in searching after one's supreme interest, Bhagavatam says. There's prayas and shreyas. So the shreyas is the ultimate benefit and the ultimate goal. And the prayas is the immediate. And guess what? We're all finally more and more to this instant gratification. We're manipulated in that way. The advert presented in that way. Get it now. I want it now. It has to be quick. Everything has fast food, fast this, fast that. Instant. We want instant gratification. So it's not very deep. It's very shallow. Not acknowledging our actual position. Our actual position is Satchidananda, is joy. To control, actually, so that we can control our own activities, control our senses, our mind, control whatever is able to be controlled, until it, connect it to serving Krishna. Okay, so I'll just see if I can pick this up again. A particle of gold is gold, a drop of water. Ishvara, we are all minute Ishvara, born Ishvaras. Trying to control nature is presently trying to control space or planets. I think someone shared with me that one person, very, very wealthy person, this just shows you when it says about controlling space or planets. They came up, sad to say it, they came up with a proposal that they help this planet, they save the planet by shipping all the trash on the planet into space. And I couldn't believe it. I was told that was true, and somebody might know that it's a very wealthy country. And this, actually, I couldn't believe it when I heard it, but it was a solid proposal that we could just that's one plan to deal with the problem of we'll ship out into space, and we got rid of the problem. And you think, oh my God, oh Krishna, what a it's called Ugra Karma, unbeneficial works meant to destroy the world. In the intelligence, as we can see, is covered by the energy and the speculative way. And that's basically what's going on, really. That's a really, really, stands out as being so ridiculously silly, devastating to everything. Similar way, all these different programs that we invent in modern times to try and deal with the problems that we've created in this world, they're all similarly all the details of that. So we'll continue for one more paragraph. And then Srila Prabhupada is going on to what is material nature? What is material nature? This is also explained in the Gita as inferior prakriti, inferior nature. So material nature is the inferior. The living entity is explained as the superior prakriti. Prakriti, or nature, is always under control, whether inferior or superior. Prakriti is female and she is controlled just as the activities of a wife are controlled by husband. Prakriti is subordinate, dominated by the Lord, who is the predominator. I can't help, the other day I read this this section of the introduction, and it brings up these modern conditioning. It says, as you heard, that Prakriti is female and she by the Lord, just as the activity are controlled by the husband. And you can say, wow, we have to take this out of Bhagavad-Gita. This is too much. People can't deal with this. Activities of a wife are controlled by the husband. Wow. Yeah, that's a bit too much. And then we could write another little line or two in there and say, just as children are controlled by their parents. Oh, hey, I think we need to go further and get rid of that here. But you can see how it's like. We can't write it. Children are not supposed to be controlled. No, to be controlled. We're all supposed to be free. Any damn thing we want, and create more and more chaos for the world, for others, and for ourselves, and lose direction in how to live in a way which can bring us to spiritual emancipation, which is the nature of the living being, spiritual, not this body, not of this world. So we can see, and a devotees, as Prabhupada says, we train to see, to hear, and then take the hearing from Bhagavad Gita, from Prabhupada, from the Acharyas, and then apply our lives and see where it shows up. So this is what we're dealing with. Prakriti is female. She's controlled by the Lord, just as activities of a wife are controlled by the husband. Hey, husband, you're not just a dominator, an exploiter. That's not what a husband is. A husband is supposed to give shelter to his wife and to his children. That's the responsibility. If you want to take up some responsibility, you're supposed to provide shelter for the children, and the wife will be very happy to be controlled or directed or guided, choose the right word, by such a person. So the husband's a lot of work to do. He actually has to become first class, so that a first class woman will be happy to work cooperatively, and in that way serve Krishna, etc., etc. We could go on a whole subject for that one, but yeah, so it's interesting to see. Prakriti is always subordinate, predominant Lord. Again, so we hear predominated by the Lord. Oh no, predominated. These terrible words. But isn't it that everyone's struggling to do the same thing? See, that's the two-sided, two edges of it's a double-sided sword. I think they call it like that. It's, so we say, oh, we don't want predominate, we don't want control, but that's what we're doing. Everyone is actually trying to predominate, and we and we say we don't want that, but actually that's what we're doing. We're hell bent on trying to predominate all over the place. And Maya is so clever. We want freedom. We want freedom for everyone. No one to predominate, no one to control. As I continue to go on and try and control in every aspect. Why? Because that's the nature. It's the nature of the living being. And we are having to learn how to properly place these desires and these and aspirations so that it will create a harmonious life, both individually and collectively. The living entities in both predominated, controlled by the Supreme Lord. According to the Gita, the entities, although parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are to be considered Prakriti. This is clearly mentioned in the seventh chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. Apariyastvanyam prakriti vidime param jiva bhutam, and so on. Quote, this material nature is my inferior Prakriti, but beyond this is another Prakriti, jiva bhutam, living entities. So that is the position. The living entities are my superior nature. And they're struggling hard in the material energy, trying to dominate. So I am thinking I better check the time. What time? Going half hour. Okay, so we'll take one more short paragraph and after that, maybe in about 10 minutes. And it might be try this again. I just remembered. So in the middle of the screen that I have in my little phone here, there's a little center speech bubble. I'm just going to press it, see if it does anything. It's not doing anything. So there you go. I'm going to encourage anybody. Oh, something. Oh, yeah, come up. Yeah. So it says messages from audience will display here. So it seems just right in the center below any picture of me, there seems to be three buttons. And in the center one is like a speech bubble. And if you press that, you can, if you're up for it, that will most likely give you a keyboard and you can put stuff in there if you want to do that. So please feel free to do that. Any reflection on anything that's been said or any question that you may have, we'll be happy to see if we can discuss that for fit. So yeah, feel free to do that. It would be quite nice because it would broaden the conversation a little bit, getting some input. so I'll continue with this last little part, large paragraph. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Material nature itself is constituted by three qualities: the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and of ignorance. Of these modes, there is eternal time, and by a combination of these modes of nature, and under the control and purview of eternal time, there are activities which are called karma. Very wonderful analytical study. In the third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam goes into great of all analysis of how everything is structured, how the modes have come into existence, and how they're influenced by eternal time. These are manifest and gradually through the interaction of different elements and subtle. First the subtle, and then gradually the gross, and the karmic activities are manifest. Continuing, these activities are being carried out from time immemorial, and we are suffering or enjoying the fruits of our activities. For instance, suppose I am a business worked very hard with and have amassed a great bank balance. Oh, it sounds pretty attractive, pretty good. Then I am an enjoyer. But then say all my money in business, then I am a sufferer. Similarly, in every field of life, we enjoy the results of work or we suffer the results. This is called karma. And then Prabhupada recaps on it. Let's do it. Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, Jiva, living entity, Prakriti, nature, Kala, eternal time, and Karma, activity, are all explained in the Bhagavad-Gita. Out of these five, the Lord, the living entities, nature, and time are eternal. Okay, so the Lord is eternal, the living eternal, the material nature is eternal, and time is eternal, eternal time. Pardon me. So that's four. The manifestation of Prakriti may be temporary, but it is not false. And Prabhupada's going to go in another direction, discuss about philosophies that say it's false, and etc. So that's another subject matter. So we understand then that out of the five subject matters in Bhagavad Gita, which discusses or deals with everything in the cosmic manifestation, four are eternal. That is, the Supreme Lord himself, the Jiva, is eternal. The material nature is eternal, sometimes manifest and sometimes manifest, but eternal. And eternal time, time is eternal. Here is manifest in the sense of past, present, and future. But there is eternal time, which is not restricted to past and present and future, but it's eternally manifest. And karma, that is temporary. Karma, actions and reactions, temporary activities and temporary reactions and interactions. And one's karma can be changed by the process of devotional life. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai kamani sarvasa ahankara vimudatma kartamiti manyate. The bewildered soul, under the influence of the modes of material nature, considers himself to be the doer of activities which are actually carried out by material nature. So the living entity, under the influence of this material nature, the goodness, the passion, he considers himself to be the doer of activities, but they're actually carried out by the material nature, which is an amazing energy of the Lord, a bewildering potency. Okay, so I think we've had a good discussion. If anyone has anything, I know it's a time of the morning where many people will be doing other things and they might view later, and that's absolutely fine. Our horse is coming back, so it's maybe the good time to finish up there. Okay. Hare Krishna. I hope everyone's doing okay. I'm just as a departing comment. I'm down here at the property down near the Coromandel, just at the Coromandel, Thames. And I hope everywhere, everyone, wherever you are, is coping up, doing okay, and is able to adjust. The living entity is always having to adjust his existential situation in the world, because everything is changing. If you've not noticed, I'm sure you have. You were a little kid, and then you were a youth, and you were a young man or woman. This is the way it goes. It just keeps changing. It's quite fun fact that we discuss at different times, that especially when you have your first children, just as you're getting used to a child being at a baby, say, and you get it done, you know how to do this and do that. I won't get into all the details. They got a bit of a routine down. It seems they change, and the routine is to change, and it seems to change, and it just doesn't stop. That's the impermanent nature of the material world. So it's always a challenge, and sometimes there's, it seems to come, you just deal with the minutiae, I think they call it something like that, where those little adjustments, and then bigger things happen. Where there's a hurricane, or there's an earthquake, there's a virus, there's a war, there's big things that really shakes up. and the living entity has to adjust. But through all of these things, we should see. I'm just thinking of a verse that Tena Kampam Susamikshamanam Bunjana Evatma Kritam Vapakam Vagva Purvir Vidadham Namaste Jiveta Yo Mukti Pade Sadayabat. Famous verse that one who earnestly waits for the Lord to bestow his causeless mercy on him or her, all the while patiently suffering the reactions to our own past misdeeds. So whatever is coming, there's no such thing as an innocent citizen ultimately. We're all here in the material world due to our past karmic activities, and we're suffering and enjoying accordingly. So one who continues to the Lord, realizing that whatever disturbances, whatever challenges I'm faced are all due to my own past decisions and choices that I've made. And he continues to offer his service to the Lord with his heart, words, and body, certainly becomes eligible for liberation, just like the beginning we were talking about Queen Di. So Queen Kunti, she wanted liberation, but she didn't want impersonal liberation. She didn't want just her own liberation from suffering, but she wanted to be constantly with Krishna. And that is the desire of devotees. So it's said that one who can do this, see any reversal, any challenge, as the special mercy of the Lord to help us, to remind us of the nature of this world, and that and to be able to continue on. And it certainly becomes eligible for liberation, and it's not impersonal liberation; it's liberation through devotional service, which is the ultimate goal of devotional service, to be reunited with the Lord. Okay, so we're finished there. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Introduction. Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari. See you again soon. Hare Krishna.